Welcome to the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. There are no traffic jams along the extra mile when you're studying for your bar exam. And now your hosts, Jackson Mummy and Megan Saya from Celebration Bar Review.
Hey everybody, welcome. Happy holidays. This is episode 340 of the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. Megan and I are taking a couple weeks off for the holidays from our normal podcast routine, but never fear, we're still here with some episodes. And today and next week, we're going to share with you a couple of recent interviews we've done with successful October 2020 bar exam takers. I think you're going to find these really useful in a couple of respects. One is just to get a feeling for what the online bar exam was like and taking it and working through it. Today, we're going to talk to a successful Florida bar exam taker. Next week, we'll be talking to a successful Georgia bar exam taker. We also thought that these would be inspiring stories. We tried to pick students who were repeat bar takers who raised their scores in dramatic ways. And today you're going to hear from Theo, who raised his score 17 points on the Florida bar exam to pass. It's really a great story, and he's got a lot of insights and a lot of wisdom, I think, to impart. So stick around for that interview. I think you're going to really enjoy it. Now, before we get to the interview with Theo, I do want to remind all of you that we are still running our very successful free webinar. It's called Now is the Best Time to Take the Bar Exam, Why You Should Ignore the Crowds and the Fear. Now, this webinar has been going since March of 2020. We've obviously updated it a bunch of times to reflect the current state of affairs in the bar exam, and we've continued to do that. One of the things I noticed this week is that it's got almost a perfect 5-star rating from thousands of participants. This is a webinar with no fluff. We get right into the information that you need within the first 2 minutes of the webinar, and we just keep going, and we're finished in 1 hour. We finished the webinar with a live Q&A to answer any questions that you've got about the strategy that we're suggesting for taking the bar exam in 2021. If you're a repeat bar taker or someone that's been out of the bar exam world for a while, and you're considering whether or not you want or need to take the bar exam in 2021, don't miss out on this free webinar. I think you're going to find it really helpful. Now, to register, all you have to do is click on the link in the show notes or go to celebrationbarreview.com/now. The webinar will be presented this Saturday at 5 p.m. Eastern, that's 2 o'clock Pacific. So day after Christmas, you get your opportunity for an hour to find out about the bar exam. I do hope you'll join us. I think you'll find it very helpful. I don't want to keep you waiting. I think you're going to really enjoy this conversation with a successful Florida bar taker. He's got a lot of insights about the process, about taking the exam online, how to prepare for it, and what he did differently to improve his score by so many points that he was able to pass with ease. So let's jump into that call. Hey everybody, welcome back to Hanging Out with Successful Bar Exam Takers. We have a great story today with a newly successful Florida bar taker. Hey Theo, how are you?
I'm doing great, Jackson. How are you?
Good, but it must be such a great feeling for you right now.
Yeah, it really is. It's surreal.
Surreal is a good way to describe the entire Florida bar exam process in 2020, isn't it?
I agree. Oh my goodness.
That was pretty crazy. We'll get into that in a minute, but why don't you tell our audience a little bit about your background and how you came to be taking the exam in what turned out to be October of 2020?
Unfortunately, I was an unsuccessful bar taker in February of 2020. I missed it by 1 point. So I had a 135, very close, but second place is the first loser. So I had to recalibrate. I became desperate, and I knew that I could not just retake it or redo it, but I had to reset. And after thorough vetting, searching the web for a different, I'm not going to say the name of the bar course that I took previously, but I just wanted something different, something that was more conducive for me, something a little bit more intimate, if you will. And I found Celebration Bar Review. I read a lot of the reviews. They were all good. And I had to find out for myself. Jackson, I called you and we spoke about my score and how you guys could help me. And I was convinced that this was the right bar review for me.
And I want to just stop there for a minute because that conversation was really an interesting one. You had a terrific attitude for a guy who just missed by a point. Because let's face it, that just hurts so badly because it's so arbitrary at that point. And sometimes people miss by 1 or 2 points and they just give up and they feel totally beaten. And in your case, it was very much a pragmatic, I'm going to get right into it and get studying. I know that I've got work to do, but I can't just do a little bit more of what I did before. I need a different approach. Is that a fair characterization of the way you felt?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so we got together, we put together a plan. And sometimes people ask me, do you have to take all the bells and whistles to be successful in our course? You didn't do that, did you?
No, no.
You took our basic coaching course and you just followed the plan. And can you tell our audience a little bit about what that meant for you on say, a weekly basis in terms of your studies?
It was actually dramatically different, diametric, if you will, diametrically opposed to how I did it the first time. I had to work, provide for a family. I'm married, 3 children, and I was studying 12, 13, 14 hours a day, actually trying to catch up with the bar review course. And I did very little to learn how to take the exam. Whereas this time I spent the most, maybe 5 hours a day, but that was a lot in the beginning, but it reduced as time progressed. And I studied for about 3 or 4 hours a day. Later on at night, I reviewed and I wrote a lot of essays, and that was very conducive for me. It saved me so much time. I actually felt like I was practicing and reviewing to take the exam. Whereas with the previous bar course that I took, I felt like I was just trying to keep up. I was trying to keep up with the percentile that they follow, however the algorithm that they use. That's what I was trying to do, and I think I got caught in that web, if you will, and I couldn't get out of it. And I would be so distraught. I was so distraught because I felt behind all the time. Oh my God, I only completed 60% or 50% or 70%. I did little to learn the bar exam.
Yeah, I think that's a big difference, that sense of being behind versus being in control. We gave you a syllabus, you were following that syllabus. Let's talk a little bit, you mentioned writing essays. Let's talk a little bit about the difference in writing in our approach that we used versus what you had done perhaps before.
Yeah, I felt like it was a lot more concentrated, if you will, and very distinctive. I compared it to maybe a manager who reviews 1,000 applications or resumes every day. They see the same thing every day, but there's going to be 1, 2, or 3 that stands out. And this particular writing style that you guys taught us, it just is very distinctive. And it also gives you room to discuss different issues, if you will. Whereas if you start off the essay with the infamous, the issue is, I felt like the examiners were expecting the essay or the paragraph to encompass that particular issue. Whereas this writing style was a lot more flexible. And I knew after writing my essays on the exam, if I didn't pass, no one did.
It's a great feeling to have. Obviously, for those that don't know what happened in Florida, we want to talk a little bit about this. The Florida exam was scheduled to be given in person in July of 2020. Then that fell apart and they decided to give an online test in August. Then they had to change that date in August. And then about 2 or 3 days before that test, you got a notification from the Florida bar. What happened then?
Like everyone, I think that I was mortified, but I was still encouraged, mainly because of the photo reading. So a lot of people were distraught or lamented what transpired because they felt that they had to memorize the material over again. I never memorized it from the beginning. If you recall, you taught us not to memorize that, and the photo reading helped that. Everything that I needed to know for August, I was confident that I would know it in October. And I just had to resume the same approach, the same practice, and the same preparation that I did before the great surrender that Sunday night.
Yeah, that was the great surrender for sure. And as a photo reader, you were reading whole mind rather than trying to read word for word or line for line. Were you using mind maps as well, or were you just photo reading?
This is a little bit of combination of both. There was a combination of both, but mainly the photo reading was more conducive for me.
And for those that don't know, photo reading allows you to read at 25,000 words a minute. So you were reading an outline, a typical bar review outline. How long would it take you to read a subject outline? Photo read it.
The entire outline, I say 45 minutes.
Okay. So you could get through an outline in 45 minutes that someone else was taking or that you had taken previously and maybe used what, 6 or 8 hours to read?
6 or 8 hours. I found myself not just reading word for word, writing word for word. And it is just so time consuming. It's very time consuming. And it wasn't conducive at all.
And you've got 3 children, so I'm pretty sure that time is not something you had an abundance of.
Yeah.
So you get ready for the exam in August, and suddenly the examiners throw the brakes on and say, nope, we're not giving that test. And now you have to reset your mental, emotional clock for another 8 weeks to go. Can you talk a little bit about what that was like for you?
I was patient. The one thing about not being successful at the bar, if you've taken it and you failed, I guess it just teaches you patience if you didn't have it already. And I knew that it was out of my control and that I had to hurry up and wait. So what I did was I only took a week. I only took a week to decompress so that I could start preparing to get back into the same gear that I was in right before they canceled or postponed the exam. And I know that shifting gears with the photo reading was a lot easier, a lot more comprehensive or conceivable, if you will, than it would if I had to start all over again and just try to memorize. And so I was just confident. Also, what helped me was some of the podcasts. I suggest and recommend that your students or prospective students, they continue to follow up with those podcasts, and because sometimes you need encouragement that you can't summon on your own. And I just used some of those for inspiration, and it just refueled me, and I was fired up and I was ready to go in October.
Thanks. That's great. By the way, the name of that podcast, since you mentioned it, is the Extra Mile Podcast for Bar Exam Takers. So
Absolutely.
we do that every week. So great.
Absolutely.
I'm glad that was helpful. So you've got this 8-week period. Now you've decompressed for a week. You're studying again. You're photo reading. You're going back through. And the examiners are changing the form of the exam to no multi-state, just 100 Florida multiple choice questions, 3 essays. It's all going to be online. Let's talk a little bit about preparing for an online exam versus preparing to take an exam in person. Was there anything different for you in that preparation?
No, there was no different preparation or relief. Some of us, they were sending us to multiple locations, one in Orlando, one in Tampa. Now I didn't have to worry about that now. So I know that I didn't have to concern myself with comfort. I would at least be comfortable at home. As far as the format of the exam, but they did exclude the MBE, which is something that I prepare for zealously. However, I did not eradicate it from my prep material because I knew that it would be imposed or implemented into the essays. And I knew that a lot of people.
Yeah, and it was for sure. So that was
Absolutely.
a smart move on your part for sure. I'm curious about one thing. With 3 children and family, did you take the exam from your home or did you go somewhere else to sit for the exam?
No, I took it at home.
And where did the family go that day?
My wife was at work. The children were at school. I took the exam in my room. Of course, it was proctored for the integrity of the exam. And it was, for me, it was very comfortable. It was smooth, and there was no squeaky wheels whatsoever.
Good. Yeah, and I wanted to ask about that because obviously we're getting a lot of questions from current bar takers saying, what's that like to take an exam online and how did it go? And in general, your experience was what most of our students experienced. It went pretty well. There were not big disasters. There certainly weren't system-wide disasters. I think it was nice, wasn't it, to not have to travel, not have to worry about were you going to Tampa or Orlando, sitting in the room with all those people and reducing the tension level, I imagine, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Great. So you take the exam and it's a different kind of test, right? You're doing the essays online, you're doing the multiple test questions from Florida online. How did you feel when the test was done? You said you felt pretty good about your essays.
Yeah, I did. I felt really good because when they told us that the essay questions would deviate from the typical 3 hours allotted time to take 3 essays, that it would be now 60 minutes per essay. So I knew that it was imperative that I practice but time myself so that I was able to write up a pretty formidable essay within 60 minutes. And I did that. Every night when the essay was probably within 3 weeks from the essay. It increased exponentially. Initially, I was doing a lot of multiple choice, my outlines, but I did increase my essay practice. I thought that might have been where I lost some of the points in that first essay because I couldn't memorize what I thought that I needed to memorize. And so that's why the photo reading, I believe, really helped me increase my score and my essay writing. As far as the multiple choice, Jackson, the practice multiple choice, of course, at first, I printed out the multiple choice questions because I believe that it was only printable. And then it switched to, I believe, virtual. And man, let me tell you, I'm not sure if you guys understand just how symmetrical or how close your practice questions were to the actual bar exam questions. And so I think that for any celebration student, they should have noticed that was very advantageous.
Yeah, we work hard to make sure that they're as close to the real thing. They don't release the actual thing. So we've worked on that for a long time. Thanks. I appreciate that feedback. So you take the exam, you've done it before, and now there's this period of waiting, which doesn't matter how long it is. It just seems like forever, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And the results are coming out the week of Thanksgiving. So what was it like on the 20th when the results came out? Tell us about that.
Oh my goodness. I set my alarm initially to wake up around 9 a.m. because I know they typically release the results around that time, between 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Unfortunately, I failed to notice that when I set my alarm, it was for 9 p.m. And so I overslept. But I got a phone call from a colleague of mine who asked me, "Hey, did you check your results?" And I said, "Oh my God, what time is it?" I overslept. And I said, "No, I did not yet." Waited maybe another hour, just pacing and I guess trying to prepare for whatever I saw. But I did have high expectations because this particular bar review, unlike the other one, this was no fear mongering at all, Jackson. You guys were very encouraging. And you know what? I learned to not tell myself that I wasn't going to fail. I learned to tell myself that I was going to pass. And so I just said, you know what? Let me stop stalling. Let me get on the Supreme Court's website. I, of course, had to remember my file number. Okay. And unfortunately, I forgot to photo read my file number. And so I had to, I forgot it. And I looked at the wrong one. That person, of course, didn't pass. I said, oh my God. Then I said, wait, that's not my number. And then I located my actual file number. And that's when it indicated that I had passed. And let me tell you, I was very excited, kind of stiff. I had to look at it and read it again and again and make sure that I was looking at it. I used a ruler, everything I can to make sure that I was not making a mistake. And I got to tell you, as soon as reality started to resonate, that's when I began to really reach out, to you, friends, family, and say, hey, if you want to pass this bar exam, I recommend you take Celebration.
Thank you for that. I know you've referred a bunch of people into our course, and we are very grateful for that and look forward to helping them have the same experience that you did. It's an incredible feeling, isn't it, when you get that passing score?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I was content with passing with a 130, 136 and a half. I know that I failed by 1 point. I don't care if I pass by 1 point. I just want to pass and get it over with. This, of course, really prepares you to be successful. I got a 152.
That's an amazing jump. Congratulations. Look,
yeah,
that's just fantastic. I'm so proud of you and so pleased. So what happens now? What's your plan now that you've passed the bar?
So now that I've passed the bar, I've, of course, gotten sworn in. I've also applied and I'm applied for the federal bar. I'm expected to be sworn in this week, Thursday, because I'm going to do bankruptcy, of course. I'm with a firm right now, and I'm doing criminal defense. I'm doing family law and bankruptcy. And I'm finally living my dream. This is something that I dreamt about. And I sometimes I still have to pinch myself to kind of tell myself to see if this is real.
Yeah, it's real, brother.
Yeah.
It is real. That is fabulous. I am so pleased for you. And I know that the whole process for everybody got elongated by so much. July exam turns into an October exam, turns into a November result. That's just an excruciating long period of time. What advice would you have for somebody that's now looking at having to take the Florida exam and might have failed it in the past? What would you say to them right now?
I would say to inhale, exhale. This test is passable, it's beatable, and to ignore the fear mongering. I believe that you empower what you ignore, and I can't say this enough. You cannot give this test and empower this test more than yourself. You can pass it, but you must be scrupulous. You must be diligent and give a good faith effort. And I would say trust. There has to be a lot of trust. Trust yourself, trust in Jackson, trust in the outline. I didn't deviate. Sometimes it was tempting. Sometimes you feel like, you know what, I think I have a grasp on torts. Let me jump right over to property, because I hear property is a nightmare. No, trust the process. Process always precedes purpose. And often it's really tempting to want to obtain the purpose before the process prepares you for the purpose. And if you enjoy the journey, then the destination will be a lot better, and it'll come a lot sooner.
Man, that's some wisdom you're laying down. I appreciate that. You should be teaching the course, not me. One of the interesting things, we'll wrap up here in a minute, but one of the interesting things was in talking to all these different folks that you had referred to us, how much they all, without being prompted, talked about their admiration for you and what a leader you have been, and I guess that you were in law school, to them and in your work. And it certainly becomes clear in hearing you talk about what it takes to be successful. I was struck from our very first conversation with the extraordinary attitude and approach that you took to all of this. I think attitude makes a huge difference, don't you?
Oh, attitude predicates altitude. You want to go higher, you got to have a great attitude.
Yeah. And you certainly have that. And I say that because I'm pretty sure that over the upcoming years, we're going to hear a lot more about you, Theo, as a member of the bar, and the things that you're going to do in whatever parts of law that you choose to practice. You're just that guy. And we're very proud that you're a Celebration Bar Review alum. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your experience and your insights with our audience today. I know it's going to make a big difference to a lot of people. And we are excited to have you as a member of the Florida Bar. It's just way cool, isn't it?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
My pleasure. And thanks to our audience for being with us. I hope you got as much out of this conversation as I did. And we'll look forward to doing this again soon with another successful bar taker. So with that, we're going to sign off for today. Thanks, everybody. Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Theo. I thought it was really enlightening and certainly inspiring. Now, if you've been trying to think about whether or not you should be taking the bar exam in 2021, I want to remind you about our free upcoming webinar, Now is the Best Time to Take the Bar Exam. It's coming up this Saturday, the 26th of December at 5 p.m. Eastern. Totally free to register, but you do need to register in advance, and you can do that by going to the show notes and clicking on the button, or by going to celebrationbarreview.com/now. I hope everybody has a great, safe, happy holiday. It's been an interesting year in 2020. Next week, we'll be back for another episode with an interview with a successful Georgia bar taker. I think you're going to find that really helpful and interesting as well. Take care, everyone. Have a great week, a great holiday, and we'll see you next week along the Extra Mile.
Thanks for listening and watching the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers at celebrationbarreview.com.